here or feeling the homesickness for a flat white and some good Kiwi news? ABC Kiwi Show brings you the latest from home and around the world in lightning speed. I am Andy P. and today is 3rd of May 2024. This video from One News discusses whether or not now is a good time to buy a house in New Zealand. The housing market has been a hot topic in recent years, with prices rising rapidly. In this video, experts weigh in on the current state of the market and offer advice for potential buyers.
There's nothing like the smell of fresh data to get economists excited. And just out of the oven is a new batch of real estate stats.
It shows the number of houses for sale is soaring. With so much on offer, is it a good time to get stuck in?
This seaside stunner at New Plymouth's Fitzroy Beach is seeking a new owner.
It's got unbelievable views. You can see the mountain. It's all here.
It's just one of around 650 houses currently for sale here.
That's about 120 more than we normally have. And if you go back to September 2023, we had between 460 and 490 houses on the market, so a massive increase in listings.
In fact, it's the highest number in almost a decade.
Yeah, what that means is that the buyers have choices and the sellers have got competition.
It's keeping agents like Daryl Patterson very busy.
In my 10 years in real estate, February and March were my busiest months for appraisals and listings.
New Plymouth's not alone. According to the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand, Wellington's leading the charge with listings up 32.4% compared with March last year. It's followed closely by Auckland, up 31.4%. Manawatu Whanganui isn't far behind, with the Bay of Plenty and Hawke's Bay rounding off the top 5.
And it's generally for the same reasons that it's always been. Death, divorce, debt and disaster are the 4 reasons why most people need to sell.
So, with so many properties to pick from,
look at it, it's gorgeous.
Is it a good time to sell or a better time to sit?
And economist Brad Olsen is with us now. Great to see you again, Brad. Why are there so many houses on the market right now?
Well, I think that part of it is that people are getting more and more pressured with those higher and higher interest rates. It's nowhere near as easy to afford mortgages anymore. In fact, for some people, if they've recently got one in the last year, it might be costing them half of their average household income to service their first year of mortgage repayments. That's a lot of money, and not everyone's going to be able to do it. So I think the fact that you've got more and more houses coming onto the market does suggest there's a lot more people under a lot more pressure. They might not be able to afford it. They don't want to get kicked out of their houses. They don't want to go through a mortgagee sale. So instead, what they've decided to do, they want to test the market, see if they can maybe change things up and do it on their own terms.
So Brad, the stock levels are high. Are the houses selling?
Some of them, but not all that many. We're seeing, in fact, the highest stock levels of houses left on the market since about 2015. So we're going back quite a while. The latest months of data suggests that there's over 33,000 homes that weren't sold that were still available on the market at the end of March. So quite a considerable number coming through there.
Let's talk about prices. What are they looking like?
Well, actually, in the latest figures, they were coming down. Now, of course, New Zealand house prices coming down still feels a little bit unusual. But what you are seeing at the moment is, again, a lot more people putting their houses on the market, wanting to sell. Not quite as many buyers, just because not that many people can go to the bank and actually get a mortgage at the moment. That means that there's more houses available than there are people to buy them. And if I'm a home buyer, then at that point, I've got a lot more choice. I'm not going to pay over the odds for a house because I know there's a few more other good options in my price range, and so there is a lot more competition that's keeping those prices a little bit lower at present.
So it's a good time to be a buyer. What's your advice for someone who needs to sell, Brad?
Well, and that's the thing, right? There's a lot of people out there who will need to sell, not only because of their mortgage situation, but because they might be having kids and need to upsize. They might be downsizing for different reasons. They might be moving to different parts of the country or overseas for work. So there's always a need to move along. I think at the moment, if I was a seller, you do have to think quite carefully about that price that you're asking for. It's not nearly as easy to find a buyer at the moment. So if you're keen to make it go through quickly, you might have to compromise a little bit more. doing your homework, looking at those numbers, not being sort of overly optimistic about prices being as realistic as possible, but also how are you putting that out there into the market? How do you ensure that people are seeing not only how good your home is, but about all the other great things, the vicinity you're in, the sort of amenities you have nearby. So I think you've got to put your best foot forward, but everyone else is doing the same thing, so you've got to be ready for those competitive pressures.
Brad, when do you think things will get back to normal?
Well, what normal is in the future, I think, is going to be a little bit different than before. Certainly at the moment, interest rates don't look likely to pull back anytime soon. And until they do, I think you'll still have a larger group of people trying to sell with a smaller group of people trying to buy. That means you'll have a buyer's market if you can afford to be a buyer, if you can get that mortgage from the bank. But I think that probably exists for another year or so before interest rates really start to pull back just a touch, giving a little bit more freedom, allowing a few more people into the buying market. So a time yet before the housing market gets back to normal. Sales numbers at the moment are about 10% below pre-pandemic, and they don't look like they're going to pop all that higher anytime soon.
Thanks, Brad. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
This video talks about a recent increase in violent attacks on bus drivers and passengers in Auckland. The video includes an interview with Haley Courtney, a union organizer representing bus drivers, and Stacey Vanderputten, the director of public transport at Auckland Transport. The video starts with a news report about a 13-year-old girl who was assaulted by a group of teenagers on a bus in Auckland. The mother of the victim describes the attack and says that her daughter is traumatized.
Extra security measures are in place at some Auckland bus stations following several violent attacks. This week, a 13-year-old girl was assaulted by as many as 20 teenagers in New Lynn in the city's west. Now, it follows a separate attack last month on 2 teenage girls by a group of 6 on board a bus on the North Shore. Breakfast spoke to the mother of one of the girls who asked to remain anonymous.
And as soon as they approached the bus station, the driver started to slow down to pull into the bus stop. One of the girls stood up because she recognised people who were outside and ran towards the front of the bus. And then, meanwhile, the other girl began punching my daughter's friend quite aggressively and forcefully in the face. And it wasn't until my daughter heard her calling out, "Stop, stop, what are you doing? Stop this," that my daughter spun around to see what was happening, and her friend's face was completely covered in blood. And then the girl began to attack my daughter, punching her in the face, and then my daughter managed to fend her off by kicking her back onto the male passenger with the balaclava. And then the bus stopped and they ran off the bus. When my daughter turned around, she saw her friend, and from head to toe, blood was dripping. There was blood on the seat, blood on her shoes. They were both incredibly upset, couldn't believe what was going on.
Yeah, scary. First Union, which represents bus drivers, sees aggression towards bus users, follows a spate of violent attacks on bus drivers. Union organiser Haley Courtney joins us now. Good morning, Haley. Thank you for being with us this morning. We heard one mum describe what happened to her daughter. I wonder whether you can describe to us the kinds of behaviour that bus drivers are experiencing here in Auckland.
Good morning. Yes,
Morning.
Well, unfortunately, we're now at crisis, where we're seeing further escalation, more assaults increasing, and now because of the nature of how much it's increased and the aggression has increased from the public, we're now seeing that spill out into the other people waiting for bus services, like you've just described.
How are your bus drivers feeling?
Our bus drivers are living in fear every day. They wake up in the mornings or before their shifts worried that they're not going to return to see their families after they've finished their driving duties.
In terms of those drivers, what are our numbers like? I know we went through a period where we weren't getting enough bus drivers. Is that still the case here in Auckland?
No, since the migrants scheme has come through, bus drivers are now at full capacity, if not close to full capacity, so there is no longer a bus driver shortage.
We know that Auckland Transport has announced that there'll be extra security patrols that are being posted at bus stops here in Tāmaki Makaurau. Is that enough?
No, look, it's not enough. Auckland Transport are always reacting to events that have occurred instead of taking proactive measures by increasing security not only at hotspot bus stations but also hotspot routes and on buses themselves. I mean, they've got a responsibility to keep everybody safe, not just the public and the passengers, but also the drivers.
Hayley, you talk about proactive measures. What do you mean by that? What do you want to see happen?
Well, we want to see security being stepped up, not just temporarily, but for all the time at these hotspot places. They also talk about implementing bus screens for drivers to have them separated from passengers. And that trial has been ongoing for over a year now. And we would really like to see that implemented, and we would really like to hear an update on how far they've gotten with those bus screens.
Well, Hayley, we actually do have Stacey Vanderputten from Auckland Transport here in the studio, and she's going to respond to the conversation that you and I are having. But I just wonder whether there's anything you want to say directly to Auckland Transport about what you'd like to see for not only your drivers, but also, I guess, widely, the public as well.
Yeah, we'd like them to step up and start acting proactively, and they've got the data that shows where these hotspots are, where the most assaults are occurring. We would like to see that there's security there all the time, at the times where the assaults are more commonly underway. We would like to see the bus screens implemented on the buses and being effective. We'd really like to see them stepping up and saying, hey, look, we've got a real big issue here. We are now at crisis point. What can we do to reduce and minimise these risks for the people? I mean, the unions would really love to sit down, and we'll do anything necessary to work with them and the council to make this happen.
Hayley Courtney from First Union, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
And to respond to that interview, we're joined by Stacey Vanderputten, Director of Public Transport at Auckland Transport. Morena, Stacey, thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning.
You obviously heard that interview with Hayley. She says that we're at crisis point, and she says that AT needs to step up and be more proactive. What is your response to what she's asking for?
Yeah, look, I totally understand in terms of the perspectives, and we have seen a really big increase over the last few weeks. Last year we had even more. We've been trending down, and we're starting to see this trend back up. It's not just one thing though, and that's really important to understand in terms of how we solution this. There's many things we can do. Obviously we've got many constraints too, and actually understanding the root cause of some of these and how we can be more proactive in working with other agencies and community leaders to find community-centric solutions that work in different geography when it comes to Auckland.
Yeah, and of course there's social issues involved in all of this.
Absolutely.
But also what Hayley is talking about is the fact that there doesn't seem to be anything being done proactively by Auckland Transport. Now, she talked about screens. We know that there was a trial that was put in place last year for buses here in Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland. So where are things at with that?
Yeah, look, that was a good point, and that sort of shows me that we need to engage better with the union so they know what we're doing. And there's been a lot that's happened since last year in terms of, you know, obviously the safety screens is one thing. Sort of progressing that from a funding perspective has been constrained. So we have had commitment to continue on with that in a smaller capacity, but until we sort of get through what we call the challenges we have with funding in order to be able to fast track that, we are limited. And that's just the reality, and we're working to resolve that. So we have another 22 buses that are going to be retrofitted out south and another 11 in the central region, but it needs to be sort of what I'll call amplified so we work forward faster. On top of that, there's other things that we've done. You know, we introduced Crime Stoppers, and so we're asking people to tell us where they're seeing these hotspots and issues. We have a limited workforce that we can deploy, and so with that in mind, we need to be able to prioritise where we use those resources. So making sure we make the best of the information, being intelligence-led, so we can deploy people proactively to understand what's happening.
I guess part of the issue here too is the fact that, again, this isn't a new issue, right? We know that there was a spike in attacks last year. Even back in 2022, we're talking about where bus drivers were being attacked. So, you talk about cost being an issue.
Yep.
Is there no way that Auckland Transport can implement something that is long-term as opposed to just reacting when something happens, putting in security patrols when there's a spate of attacks, whether that's on the public or the bus drivers themselves? Is there anything that can be implemented by Auckland Transport?
The priority in terms of that should be the screens. Why? Because it's an engineering measure and it can be standardised across everything. So that's one thing, and that's what we're motivated to make sure we see happen. In terms of static security, we have static security at particular locations. We can't have them everywhere, and that's why we do need to be intelligence-led and understanding where they're best deployed to. So yes, can we do more? We can, but we also have these really big constraints around us as well. So making sure that we're actually responsible and put people where they are, get the information so we can actually prioritise where we're doing and deploying resources. It is a really complex social issue that we're seeing, particularly with youth, and listening to the mother earlier, I understand that as a mum of 2 teenagers. It's really concerning that we're seeing this, and we're seeing this spike. So we really want to have better community engagement, bring in community leaders, and let's look at localised solutions that we can use, particularly in the likes of school holidays, at those hotspots that have been identified that are enduring and have that longevity, and get that community engagement around the station precinct in order to be able to, manage these issues on a community level with us, because that's really important.
You talk about being motivated to put in the screens in buses.
Yeah.
Is that a commitment by Auckland Transport to make sure that happens, to keep drivers safe?
Yeah, absolutely. Our board is already committed to that. So any new bus that's procured new has a factory fitted security shield. The issue we have is actually on the retrofit, because we've put this in as a policy position last year. We have a whole fleet of 1,400 buses out there that don't have these. That's why we needed to do a trial in order to start understand fit for purpose, get drivers' feedback, make sure that from a design perspective where we're mitigating those issues such as glare and comfort, and then progressing that.
Stacey Vanderputten from Auckland Transport, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
This video reports a shooting incident that happened outside Wellington Hospital on May 1st, 2024. According to the video, a man with a machete threatened another person outside a motor lodge located across the street from the hospital. The victim then retrieved a firearm, jumped into a Mitsubishi Colt with another person, and drove to the emergency department car park. The driver of the Mitsubishi Colt drove the wrong way up the exit lane and stopped in front of the hospital's main entrance, where the Ford Ranger was parked. Another confrontation ensued, and a shot was fired at the Ford Ranger. Both vehicles fled the scene. The police were called, and the main entrance of the hospital was shut down temporarily. The hospital jib and jish in Washington itself continued operating as usual. A 40-year-old man was arrested and is due to appear in court on May 3rd, 2024. The Ford Ranger was also seized by the police. The police are asking anyone with information or footage of the incident to come forward.
Security has been ramped up at Wellington Hospital after a shot was fired outside its main entrance yesterday. Police have made one arrest but are still searching for a second person. Here's Kate Nicol-Williams with an update.
The incident occurred outside this motor lodge opposite the hospital just after 5 p.m. The driver of a white Ford Ranger threatened a person with a machete. That person then grabbed a firearm and jumped into a grey Mitsubishi Colt with another person, heading for the emergency department car park near here. They drove the wrong way up the vehicle exit, stopping outside the hospital's main entrance where the Ford was parked up. Police say there was another confrontation and the firearm was discharged at the Ford Ranger. Both vehicles then fled the scene. Officers were called to the scene and the main entrance was shut temporarily, but the hospital kept operating as usual. Today, a 40-year-old man's been arrested. He's due to appear in court tomorrow. The Ford Ranger's been seized. Police want to hear from anyone with information, photos or video footage.
And for our final chuckle today, or to lighten things up before we go, comedy legend Jerry Seinfeld chatted with Seven. Sharp ahead of us tore down under. We can't wait to see him live. Optional at a lighthearted comment about his coffee order from the Seven Shark team. We wish you all happy days. Optional at back home in New Zealand if most viewers are. In New Zealand, we'll be back with more news on Monday. Until then.
His name is Jerry, but he's known the world over by his last name, Seinfeld.
And for anyone older than 20, he needs no introduction. For those younger, they might need a reminder of the B-movie. I caught up with comedy legend Jerry Seinfeld ahead of his tour Down Under.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me on today. What are we doing? Is this a TV show?
Yeah, so this is we're on at 7 o'clock at night. We're called 7 Sharp.
Really? In front of these drapes with those shelves?
It's a public holiday here today, so I'm at home. But so yeah, It's slightly makeshift today.
Well, I hope the ratings don't go down because of that.
Well, I'm hoping you'll bring them back up again.
Hello, Newman.
Hello, Jerry.
Arguably comedy's most recognisable face and voice is heading back to New Zealand for the first time in 7 years.
I know that you've been here before, but we have little country syndrome. We always worry about what dignitaries like you think of our country. So I do have to ask, did you have a good time when you were here?
Of course I did. The Kiwis are so friendly and funny, and, they love the All Blacks, and they love their streets with the pavement that goes up onto the sidewalk. Everybody says it's the most beautiful place in the world.
Another cafe latte? Yeah, you better believe it. Since when are you so trendy?
That's what I remember from my last tours. I would just say, may I have a coffee? And they give you a flat white. I've been actually drinking flat white since then. I think it was 7 years ago we did our last tour there. And I've been drinking flat whites ever since.
It was Jerry Seinfeld's 9-season juggernaut of the same name that catapulted him and his mates onto TV screens worldwide. With a theme tune and cast that perfectly encapsulated the 90s.
You struck it pretty lucky, didn't you, with that lot?
Very lucky. Crazy lucky. You don't even think about it when you get that lucky. People that are talented very rarely get to work with 10 other talented people.
Well, what's the show about? It's about nothing.
I know that you're always asked this, but is there any glimmer of hope that people can hold to, Seinfeld fans can hold on to, any of you getting together at some stage?
I don't think so. I don't think there's even a faint glimmer. Things don't just exist in combination, they exist in a moment in time. We were all at a point in our lives where we fit together, and I don't think that would be the case all these years later.
Those reunion shows, they're so lame, really.
But one old mate the 70-year-old did fit together with recently was head writer of Seinfeld, Larry David, in the final of his show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, complete with a nod to Seinfeld's own final episode.
This is how we should have ended the finale. Oh my God, you're right. How did we not think of that?
How fun to be able to work with a friend again like that.
Fantastic, Sasha. It was such an exciting moment because I don't think people are stopping to do the math that enabled that to happen. The math of 2 shows by 2 people in consecutive order, 25 years apart, where both people are playing themselves. Think of the pieces of that had to be in place for us to even do that.
Jerry Seinfeld has been with us before. He's a very funny young comedian.
He spent decades honing his craft of comedy.
It seems to me like this is all we do in life. You sit around the house, you go, I want to go out. You go out, you stand around somewhere for a little while, and you go, I got to be getting back.
And despite some of his earliest sets revealing a confident and fully formed comedian, he remembers it differently.
I was absolutely terrified inside. Every moment. I had no idea if this was working or if, I could really do this. I felt like I was a little kid trying to make a room full of adults laugh after, a family gathering. I just felt very uncomfortable.
So when he heads to NZ in June, it will be on stage, behind a mic and in front of a live audience, staying true to his love of raw comedy.
For you, stand-up, it feels like it's still your jam.
That is my constant thing, yeah. It's the purest form, of comedy for me. You get no help at all out there, and real comedians like it that way. We just want to try and do it on our own.
Well, look, we are so excited about you coming over to New Zealand, and thank you for all the joy you've brought all of us for so many years.
Thank you, Sasha. That is so nice. Thank you. I look forward to being there with you. Thanks so much. I appreciate that.